You've seen the pictures, right? The laptop on a balcony overlooking the sea, the kids learning about ancient history by actually being there. That's the dream of world schooling, turning the entire globe into your family's classroom. It's this incredible vision of freedom, connection, and adventure. But what happens when that dream slams into reality?
Right. Let's get real for a second, because behind those perfect Instagram photos, there's a much more complicated story going on. The constant moving, the total lack of routine, the pressure of being parent, teacher, employee, and travel agent all at once, it can push a family right to the edge.
And the numbers, they don't lie. One survey found that almost 2 out of every 5 digital nomads struggle with their mental health. Now, imagine adding kids to that mix. The result is what experts are calling nomadic burnout, and that's when the thrill of the adventure just gets replaced by pure exhaustion and feeling disconnected.
So that brings us to the big question, doesn't it? It's not about who has the best packing hacks or the biggest travel budget. There is something else going on here, a totally different kind of prep work that makes or breaks the whole experience. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Okay, so here's the secret that almost nobody talks about. The key to successful world schooling isn't external. It's not about the logistics. It's internal. For explorers, there's this hidden pattern, this kind of inner architecture that the really resilient families figure out how to build for themselves to handle all the chaos.
And this thing, it actually has a name, psychosocial architecture. For strategists, now I know that sounds a little academic, but think of it like your family's internal operating system. When all the normal supports are gone, no school, no office, no grandma down the street, this is the internal framework you have to rely on. It's the set of tools you use to manage stress and actually communicate when you're thousands of miles from anything familiar.
See, in a normal life, we're surrounded by these external structures, right? Schools, offices, our friends, a predictable schedule. They kind of hold everything together for us. World schooling families, they don't have that luxury. So they have to get really good at building their own internal structures. Things like shared communication models, emotional first aid kits, and conflict blueprints.
So, what's the very first tool in this toolkit? Well, it's something so simple, it's brilliant. It's a proactive first aid kit for family meltdowns, and it's called the HALT check. This is a super safe and practical way to figure out what's really going on before things explode.
All right, so before you react to a kid having a tantrum in a crowded airport, the first question is always this. H, are they hungry? I know, it sounds ridiculously basic, but when you're traveling, meal times are all over the place, the food is unfamiliar, and a blood sugar crash is one of the biggest triggers for a fight. Next up is A. Are they angry or anxious? I mean, think about it. You're trying to figure out a new language, worried you're going to miss a train, or just feeling totally overwhelmed by a chaotic market. Those are huge emotional triggers for anyone. That stress of the unknown, it often just comes out looking like anger.
Then we check for L. Are they lonely? World schooling means you're saying goodbye, a lot. Friendships can feel temporary, and kids, and let's be honest, parents too, can really start to miss the stability of their friends and family back home. It's a real emotional need that often gets overlooked.
And finally, T. Are they just plain tired? Jet lag, weird sleep schedules, and just the sheer mental energy it takes to exist in a new environment? It's exhausting. So often what we see as bad behavior is really just a kid who is completely, utterly worn out.
Now, the real genius here is mapping these HALT states to the specific triggers of the nomadic lifestyle. So for example, irregular meals cause hunger, so the intervention is you just always have snacks. Easy. Travel stress leads to anger, so you learn to take a beat and just name the feeling out loud. Transient friends cause loneliness, so you make it a point to schedule calls with family back home. Knowing this stuff isn't just helpful. For parents on the road, it's like having a superpower.
Okay, that's great for prevention. But what about when a conflict is already happening? HALT is your first aid kit, but sometimes you need a blueprint for how to defuse a bomb that's already ticking. And that's where our second tool comes in, nonviolent communication, or NVC.
Let's look at how this works. NVC gives us a really clear 4-step model for saying what we need without blaming or criticizing anyone. It's a method that's designed to keep you connected even in the middle of a disagreement. The steps are pretty simple: observation, feeling, need, and request. So here's the breakdown. First, you state a neutral, factual observation, just what you see. Then, you express a feeling using an I statement. Next, you connect that feeling to a universal need that isn't being met. And finally, you make a clear, positive request, something someone can actually do.
And this is where you see how powerful it is. The first one,
"You're always so disorganized." NVC calls that jackal language. It's an attack, and it's guaranteed to make the other person get defensive. But the second one? It's a connecting request. You're not blaming. You're just sharing what's going on inside you and asking for help. It completely transforms the dynamic from a fight into a collaboration.
All right, so now we have our two main tools. We've got HALT for diagnosing the problem and NVC for communicating through it. Let's put them together in the ultimate stress test, the classic travel day meltdown.
But first, here's a hidden detail that is absolutely critical to understand. For explorers, you have to know if you're dealing with a tantrum or a meltdown. A tantrum is goal-oriented. A kid wants something and they're frustrated they can't have it. A meltdown, that's a neurological short circuit. Their system is completely overwhelmed and is basically shut down. And you have to respond to them in totally different ways.
So what does a thriving response look like in the middle of a meltdown? Well, first, you quickly run through HALT in your head to check for any physical triggers. Then, and this is key, instead of punishment, you practice something called co-regulation. You become their calm anchor in the storm. You get down on their level, you use a low and slow voice, and you just offer a safe presence until their nervous system can get back online.
And here is the most important part of all of this. When you respond this way, you're doing so much more than just crisis management. You are actively teaching your kids how to regulate their own emotions. You're building that psychosocial architecture, brick by brick, creating this foundation of resilience that is going to serve them for their entire lives, long after the trip is over.
In the end, what we learn from the families who really make this work is that their success has nothing to do with the stamps in their passports. It's all about the strength of their internal operating system. The real journey they're on isn't geographical, it's psychological.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought, right? What if this isn't just a survival guide for a really niche lifestyle? What if building this strong internal architecture, using tools like HALT and NVC, is actually the blueprint for a more resilient, more connected, and more emotionally intelligent life for any family anywhere?
If this touched your heart, please subscribe, like, and share it with your family. Save this for more meaningful content ahead.